Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Freemelon podcast. I'm Eli Martyr. I want to thank you guys all for joining me here once again today. And for this episode, I'm going to do another little story time with you and take a book from my library, read you a little bit of an excerpt, and I'll be able to discuss as we're going through. So the book I'm going to be reading to you from is called Wisdom of the Mystic Masters. It's by an occultist named Joseph J. Weed. And the subject that we're going to be chatting about is about the principle of karma and natural law. And he kind of touches on different subjects here or there within this chapter. But I thought this would be a good time to, get you familiar with how the law of consequence works and other little related material throughout the chapter. So let's get into this. Oh, yeah, I guess you know what I should do. I should probably give you a little intro onto the background of the author. Okay, also I'll read from the back here. The late Joseph J. Weed was a lifelong student of esoteric philosophy. While still a student, he became interested in mysticism and the occult, and continued to study the teachings of the Agni Yoga Society and the Arcane School. In 1938, he began to lecture on these subjects and delivered nearly 200 lectures to audiences in cities throughout the United States and Canada. In all, nearly 250,000 copies of his books have been sold. As the former president of Weed Television Corp. and Van Drentham International Ltd., his duties required almost constant travel and contact with people all over the globe. So, a pretty seminal author and distributor of lectures and whatnot. And he's got some interesting things to say in his book. So let's get into this. The chapter that we're going to be reading from is called The Principle of Karma, How You Can Make and Remake Your Future. The next step in gaining understanding of yourself and ultimate control of your destiny is a knowledge of karma. Karma is a Hindu word which literally means action. Today, its meaning is extended to refer to the results of action. Many people understand karma as the working of the law of cause and effect. This it is, true enough, but the definition is too broad. The law of cause and effect applies on all planes and under all circumstances. A tumbling pebble on a mountainside can precipitate a landslide, but it is only by a stretch of the imagination that we would refer to the landslide as a karmic result of the pebble in motion. When we use the word karma, we refer to the results engendered by volitional action. Karma, in its very essence, implies the presence of motive, which in turn necessitates the exercise of free choice. More accurately, then, we may define karma as the working of the law of cause and effect as it applies to the results of decisions reached and thoughts held by ensouled forms capable of free choice. I'm going to read that one more time so you guys can get a very accurate picture going here. More accurately, then, we may define karma as the working of the law of cause and effect as it applies to the results of decisions reached and thoughts held by ensouled forms capable of free choice. Okay? So it's not just cause and effect. There's another element that is working in karma, okay, in the phenomenon of karma. You are just such an ensouled form, as are all men, and it is karma as it applies to you that I will describe. However, you must not overlook the fact that groups of men, both small and large, permanent and temporary, are also ensouled forms, and as such create karma. This accounts for group karma, which adheres to permanent groups such as the family, city, nation, and race, and also to temporary groups like societies, business organizations, corporations, clubs, etc. In considering karma as it applies to you, we will study its causes, its working out or effects, how it may be molded, the steps to take to be liberated from it. We are fond of saying that all men are created equal, but we ourselves do not accept this literally. No one is so blind or so foolish as to imagine that there is actual equality of ability, or environment, or conditions of birth for all. Two questions arise. Number one, is this inequality the result of karma? And number two, is it fair? The answer to both is yes. You are today the end product of your own decisions and actions, both recent and in the distant past. Every thought, every emotion or wish, and every action creates karma, and you as a thinking entity have been thus creating karma for thousands and possibly millions of years. If these thoughts, ideas, desires, passions, and acts are benevolent, so-called good karma results. If they are malevolent, evil or difficult karma is created. If they are malevolent, evil or difficult karma is created. Thus, the good or evil we generate attaches itself to us and remains in our life current until we have satisfied it by balancing it out. The laws of nature are invariable and immutable. Let's read that one more time. The laws of nature are invariable and immutable. Man recognizes this, although he frequently attempts to defy these laws. The chemist in his laboratory knows he may expect certain well-defined results if he places two elements in close proximity in a definite set of conditions. If these results are not achieved, he does not assume the law has changed, but considers that he himself has made an error. Nature intends you to be happy and successful and to enjoy the fruits she so bountifully supplies. If this is not true for you, you may be sure you have broken natural law. I'll read that one more time. If this is not true for you, you may be sure that you have broken natural law. Not that Mother Nature is just arbitrarily placing upon you adverse conditions because that's just the way randomness works. No. You have broken natural law. Sorry, that was a reader's aside. Okay, continuing on. Either currently or in the past, and that you are now suffering the penalty for this infraction. This is not punishment in the sense that we punish evildoers, but rather a balancing out of energies. If you obey the law, you may confidently predict a harmonious and happy result, for nature is conquered by obedience to her laws. Okay, this next little section is subtitled Karma Energized by Your Will. The most persistent and lasting karma comes from the thought forms that have been energized by your will. The great Oriental teacher K.H. has described this as follows. Every thought of man upon being evolved passes into the inner world and becomes an active entity by associating itself, coalescing, we might term it, with an elemental, that is to say, with one of the semi-intelligent forces of the more subtle kingdoms of matter. It survives as an active intelligence, a creature of the mind's begetting, for a longer or shorter period proportionate with the original intensity of the cerebral action which generated it. Thus, a good thought is perpetuated as an active, beneficent power, an evil one as a maleficent demon. And so man is continually peopling his current in the space with a world of his own, crowded with the offspring of his fancies, desires, impulses, and passions. A current which reacts upon any sensitive or nervous organization which comes in contact with it in proportion to its dynamic intensity. Okay, continuing on with the author. Now, let us see what this means. In the average man's present stage of development, every single one of his thoughts passes through and is colored by his desire body on the way to and from his active consciousness. Desire body, readers aside, desire body meaning the shell that surrounds and is interconnected inextricably from your physical body. Okay, some people call this the astral body, but it's that energetic body that is part of you, that is one of your human bodies. It's just that it exists beyond the seen realm. You can see the astral body, the desire body, with certain photography. I believe it's Carillion photography that you can see the energetic body of anybody. Anyone can do this as long as you have the right equipment. So that's what he means by desire body. Okay, continuing on. Though and it is colored by his desire body on the way to and from his active consciousness. Created originally as a mental entity, it comes into being as a vibrating force on the mental plane. These vibrations from the original idea or pattern which remain on the mental plane attract and mold the forces of each plane below the mental on its way to the active physical consciousness. The energetic creations so molded by the idea attach themselves to him and remain with him for a longer or shorter time, depending upon the original intensity of the thought which created them, and, of course, the re-energizing effect that a repetition of this thought has upon them. Readers aside, so what he's saying is that a thought, a type of thought, is created by your thought body in the mental world, okay, in the mental realm. You have just like I described the desire body, it's a type of body that is affixed to you, just it operates in the unseen world. You also have a mental body, and that body is of the same nature, except of a finer degree. It's a finer body, even finer than the desire body. So, you have the three states of matter. You have solid, liquid, gas, right? Each one becoming finer and finer. Okay, well, that spectrum of fineness, it continues to go upward into different forms of energy. So then you have, the etheric body, then the desire body, and then mental body on top of that. Okay, so at the highest and most fine level, the finer body that you have, associated with thought, right? The fineness of thought, your body associated with that creates the thought form by drawing energy and by drawing matter, thought matter, into its constituency, and then that thought passes down through a kind of almost like a devolution process to the lower bodies. So that thought takes a form, passes into the desire body, picks up a certain emotional attachment, okay? Then passes down lower and lower until it hits your physical body where you express the thought, okay? So it starts on the thought, and comes down lower and lower and lower until it expresses manifestation through your thoughts, through your words or your actions, okay? Let's move on here. It is this cloud of self-created, energetic beings, elementals, so to speak, existing in the finer grades of matter and hovering about you that creates your karma. These active entities are responsible for what you know as sensation. They translate vibrations and impinge upon your awareness into what is known and recognized by you as sight, feeling, taste, smell, and sound. They manifest themselves physically in this manner and also more subtly, but very strongly in the emotional field. Thus, it is said that men live in a world of illusion, peopled by phantasms of their own creation. I guess I will also add that what he's also suggesting is that these thought forms are sticky. Okay? So the types of thoughts and the types of emotions and feelings that you create and you subject yourself to, they linger, okay? They stick to your body. And because they always have an energetic property, they attract or repel like frequencies or discordant frequencies, depending on what the thought is, and will be creating your reality whether you are aware of it or not. I think I may have described that in a strange way. Let me say it one more time. These thoughts that you create, these thought forms that you create, they're very sticky, like I said, and as they cling to you, they will draw to them things that are similar in nature. Okay, I think that's a better way to describe it. Yeah, they'll draw to them some energies that are similar in nature. So if you draw to yourself constantly a certain thought that's maybe destructive, self-destructive, or hateful to other people, well, then you will continue to attract hatefulness to yourself. Or if it's a loving thought, loving emotionality that you constantly bathe yourself in, literally, then you'll draw that to you constantly. Okay, next subtitle, The Cloud of Entities Around You. Oh, interesting. By your will, emotions, and desires, you are constantly influencing this cloud of entities around you, and they sensitively respond to all the thrills of feelings that you send out. In just the same manner, but to a lesser degree, do these elementals respond to vibrations approaching them from without. This is the actual process of how you become aware of physical objects, and it indicates how you can become aware of the feelings and thoughts of another. Not only do you generate and send out thought forms, but you act as a magnet to draw to you the thought forms of others. You may thus attract to yourself reinforcements of energy, and it lies with you to decide whether these forces drawn from without shall be for good or evil. If your thoughts are pure and noble, you will attract hosts of beneficent entities. Sometimes you may wonder at the tremendous power of achievement which seems so far beyond normal ability that you may come in answer to noble and unselfish effort. Every day, the newspapers carry some such story, how a 90-pound mother lifted the wheel of an automobile to free her small son caught beneath it, how a wounded Marine in Vietnam carried his more seriously injured comrade through 2 miles of jungle swamps to get medical aid, how a 14-year-old girl swam 4 miles through rough water to the Florida shore to get help for her grandfather and small brother, who were being carried along in the Gulf Stream in an open boat with a damaged motor. The seeming impossible is accomplished when the determination is accompanied by high purpose. This also is what Tennyson referred to when he wrote of Sir Galahad. His strength was the strength of 10 because his heart was pure. Conversely, lower thoughts have a disturbing and evil effect, sometimes astonishingly beyond the actual intention of the individual. Some devil must have tempted me, is the cry that is often heard, and it is true that these additional evil forces, sympathetic to and adding to his own wrong intentions, have provided the strength for the deed. Okay, readers aside, just pay attention here. Please observe, we are not attacked, quote unquote, attacked by these entities. We attract them to us. At this point, you may rightly question, what is the difference between good and evil action, and how may I distinguish it? Okay, sorry, and before, readers aside, just before I get there, you do hear about people in the metaphysical community talking about how they get attacked by demons and entities and whatnot, and I don't want to say that that's not true, because it isn't. This is a possibility, but just like disease and sickness in the physical world, because we always talk about as above, so below, right? And how the world is self-similar across all scales. And just like you have to create the conditions by which disease and illness afflicts your physical body, so too do you have to create the mental and emotional conditions in the non-seen world so to attract harmful elementals to your non-physical and emotional bodies. It works the same way in the physical as it does in the non-physical. And it couldn't really be any other way, because this is simply a natural law. This is the law of as above, so below, the law of correspondence. Excuse me. It's the law of correspondence. Okay, so continuing on. What is the difference between good and evil, and how may I distinguish it? This is very important. The answer, I am sure you already know. A good thought, wish, or act is one which conforms to the law of nature. Evil is that which is at variance with nature's law. I'm going to read that one more time. You know me, I'm sorry if I'm being redundant, but I like to be as clear and slow and methodical as possible, if you have not noticed yet. A good thought, wish, or act is one which conforms to the law of nature. Evil is that which is at variance with nature's law. Now, as to how to know the law, this requires the application of intelligence and good judgment. In the ultimate, you will only know the law, really know it, through your own experience. However, you can learn it much more quickly and save yourself grief if you will accept and act on advice from more advanced souls who have already traveled along the road through life and encountered the same problems that beset you. These elder brothers, the saints of the various churches, the masters of wisdom, have from time immemorial been precipitating into the consciousness of mankind advice and direction based upon their own experience. Thus, the words of Christ, love one another, are not abstract religious precept, but a scientific technique. A scientific technique. Okay, remember that, ladies and gentlemen. Science. It is the science of the soul, the science of life, the science of natural law. Continuing. And not an abstract religious precept, but a scientific technique found workable and successful by him, which he has passed on to us as a shortcut to the working out and elimination of karma. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to be skipping ahead a little bit here to the next subtitle called Conscience as the Beginning of Wisdom. Very gradually at first, but later with increasing speed, you learn from many repetitions and sometimes disastrous results that certain actions are against the law and must be avoided. There is built into your consciousness a recollection that wanton killing, for example, brings extremely unpleasant results for you. There comes a time when, faced with the temptation to kill, you are stricken in advance by a feeling which can only be described as a sort of remorse, a remorse for something you have not yet done. The temptation to kill is overcome by this remorseful feeling, and you obey the law instead of breaking it. This peculiar feeling, this inner guidance, is known as conscience, and it indicates the beginning of wisdom. If you are willing to listen to the voice of conscience every time you are faced with the necessity for a new and unique action, you will gradually come to know you have in it a never-failing guidance, which with use will become increasingly more and more successful in keeping you within the law. So, you see, ladies and gentlemen, the laws of man, the laws of government and tyrannical government and authority, many of these laws have nothing to do with natural law. In fact, the laws that we say are good laws are completely redundant and unnecessary, because the conscience, The conscience gives you what you need to understand what is right and what is wrong. And subsequently, the punishments for breaking these natural laws of conscience are inherent in the act itself. And so you wouldn't need an authority figure or some sort of government, which we say is absolutely necessary. It's not, because the consequences are inherent in the law itself or in the act itself. So if let's just say there's a small tribe, a small community of people, and with no overt type of government as we know it, and person A just decides, you know what, I'm a jerk, and murders person B. Well, the consequences of that action are going to be that the rest of the tribe folk are going to be, oh wow, this guy's no good, and they're either going to murder him back, or severely injure him, or ostracize him and kick him out of the tribe. Hey, you're not allowed to live with us. Go fend for yourself in the wilderness. And so the consequences, they balance themselves out. Like Mr. Weed was saying earlier in the book, the karma it's not necessarily an evil done to you, but it is an act of balancing. Okay? And that's very important for us to know. Okay. Now, where did I leave off? I started speaking to my screen and lost my place in the book. Okay, give me a second here. If you're willing to more successful in keeping you within the law. Okay, here we go. It is at this point you begin to liquidate more debts than you currently contract. You begin to free yourself from some of the myriad of subtle beings that hover about you. You are learning the proper conduct in order that new karmic problems be avoided. You learn not to regret loss and not to be overjoyed at gain. You learn to live more for the sake of others and not so much for your own self-satisfaction. You learn to think not as an individual, but as part of a group. The law of karma may be likened to the physical law of momentum. A plate falls from a table. If allowed to strike the floor, it will break. The result, in a small way, will be cataclysmic. But if the observer is quick, if he sees in advance what will happen and acts to prevent it, he can interpose his hands between the falling plate and the floor and either catch the plate or deflect it in such a way that the fall will be broken. The momentum generated by the falling body has either been met and opposed by an equal force or diverted by a force coming at an angle, with the result that the impending damage does not occur. It is in just such a manner that impending karmic results can be altered. As the student advances in knowledge and understanding, it is given to him to see certain karmic conditions which are about to precipitate themselves into action. To quote a modern example, he may learn that his home is situated on the San Andreas Fault and therefore quite likely to suffer earthquake damage, so he counteracts this by a simple expedient of selling the house and moving away. Or, again, he may meet a man drawn together by karmic ties from the past, and observing that this man intends nothing but evil for him, he can refuse to contend with him. To fight back will only continue the warfare. The successful technique is to meet ill with goodwill, hate with love, and so disarm and disintegrate the malevolent intentions of the other. It is in this simple manner that you may avert the worst blows of personal karma. So I want to add a little bit of a reader's aside here. What he's talking about is not necessarily straight pacifism, okay? He says to meet ill with goodwill and hate with love. He's not talking about being passive or inactive in the face of evil. Let's just say that someone on the street runs into you and wants to fight you for some reason. Just won't leave you alone and is ready to fight you. If you can neutralize or disintegrate, right, that offensive air with words, with love, with kindness, okay, if you can do that, then that is good. Then that is the amount of force that was necessary to dispel the affront, okay? But if things go from bad to worse, and the person actually starts attacking you and hitting you and punching you and is not relenting, it would be very silly of you to make the decision that you are going to continue to use goodwill and love to deal with the situation. You know, if someone's punching you in the face and your response is to hit the downward dog position and chant Om, well, I have bad news for you. That makes you an idiot. That makes you a fool. Okay? It would be a more spiritually elevated decision to actually fight back, use whatever tools you can to dispel the affront, right? To neutralize the affront, and no more than is necessary. Thus, you would be giving a karmic lesson to the person. The person would be incurring the karmic debt associated with his or her actions, and you would not be incurring any negative karma to yourself. Okay, people in the New Age community, people often get this wrong. They equate violence with force. The two are not the same. Violence is the use of force in opposition to natural law, where simply force, right, using defensive force, is in alignment with natural law. Violence is not, but defensive force always is. Okay? Especially when the defensive force is in the defense of one's own personal freedom, or in the freedoms of other people as well. Okay? So I just wanted to make that very clear as we're moving forward here. Okay, well, let me give a little recap of what. So it is in this simple manner that you may avert the worst blows of personal karma. Okay, moving on. Therefore, send out truth against falsehood. Against selfishness, oppose charity. In the presence of foulness, emanate purity. These actions, fiery in their essence, burn up the demons which karma may bring to your door. It is true, there may be no direct interference with karma, but you may modify its action by knowledge. When you understand this, you may use karmic force to effect karmic results and once more conquer nature by obedience to her law. Readers aside, you can never conquer nature's laws. Those you can do absolutely nothing about. The only thing that you can do is recognize and learn what those laws are and obey them to the letter, thus giving you all the results that you could possibly hope and dream for in your life. Okay, next subheading, and this is the last little section of the book, or of this chapter, excuse me. Diverting adverse karmic results. As knowledge grows, you will find it easier and easier to rid yourself of the karma of the past. It will become possible to look backward and trace karmic lines right up to the present, so that action can be taken to counteract or divert the undesired karmic results. It will also become possible to look forward and see the effects in the future being generated by the actions of today. With such knowledge of causes, you will be able to utilize the law and, relying on its unchangeability, set up effects in the future which you desire. In physics, it is possible to neutralize a sound wave by setting up another sound wave of the same pattern, which starts from the opposite pole. The result is equilibrium or silence. In just this same manner, you can neutralize the vibrations of hatred, for example, by sending out against them vibrations of love, and reach thereby a much desired equilibrium. Karma can also be altered by thought, by a change in your outlook or mental attitude. The success of certain voodoo practices depend upon this factor, wherein the sick are made well or the healthy made sick by the suggestion of the obeah, or witch doctor. You may say that this is largely the result of suggestion, and it cannot be disputed that the subconscious is the controlling factor, but the future of that individual does not become different. There is no question but that a decisive act can have a great bearing on your future. You can jump from the top of the Empire State Building and conclusively end your future on the spot. Or you can decide to stop worrying about trifles and lengthen your life by 10 years. There may have been many stories written around the concept that the future is in some respects preordained. In one story that I recall, the hero has 3 paths before him. Each path takes him to a different part of the world, where the events that befall him are unique and unlike the events of either of the other paths. But in the end, on a certain day, which is the same for all 3, he is killed by a falling tree. This concept may be true in some cases, but it is certainly not true in all. Some people have 2, 3, or 4 different possible dates on which their life may terminate, and these are subject to the decisions and actions of the individual. The son of a New York Rosicrucian is a case in point. When he was quite young, his mother was informed by her teacher that the boy had 2 possible death points 15 years apart. The earlier date with fate was on European soil. The earlier date with fate was on European soil. Since he was living in New York, little thought was given to it. However, when he was 21, the United States got into World War II. He went to an officer's training school, and within 8 months' time, he was shipped to France. There, 2 days before his 22nd birthday, as had been foretold, he was hit by a sniper's bullet and instantly killed. So you see that the time of death can sometimes depend upon where you are. Your mental outlook, the way you see yourself and the world around you, has a very powerful influence upon your future. By changing your outlook, you can change your future. Sometimes this can be done by using a device or a so-called gimmick. Ed Wynn, the comedian, when he was 70 years old and no longer in demand as a performer, used a gimmick to effect a change in his future. It was something only he would think of. Half serious and half in jest, he changed his birthday to a day 15 years and 4 months later than the actual date. Instead of 70 years, he then only admitted to 55, celebrated his birthday on the new day, and in every way acted and gave the impression that the new date was correct. Amazingly, his whole outlook changed. He felt younger and acted younger. Ideas for comedy acts came to him, and before long, he was working in a new television show and earning more money than ever before. Wynn, of course, was the one most affected by this artifice. He succeeded in convincing himself he was that much younger and acted accordingly. No one else was deceived. But the effect on Ed Wynn was so pronounced that he changed himself from a has-been to a star within a few months. In just such a manner can a change in mental attitude alter your future. Ooh, excuse me. As long as any karmic ties remain, we all shall, of necessity, return to the physical body again and again. Good karma drags us back relentlessly as bad, and the chain forged out of our virtues holds us just as firmly as that created by our vices. We shall only become free when we have learned the proper technique, and this lies not in our actions but in our desires, or rather in our lack of desires. As long as there is the slightest tinge of self in any of our actions, as long as we are good because we hope for reward, then we shall have to return here in order to receive that reward. Every cause has its effect, every action its fruit, and desire is the cord that links them. When this thread is broken and burned out, the connection will end and the soul will be free. True, you will continue to live and act, but no longer for the self. Thought of self will then be gone, and consciousness will gradually merge into the larger life. So that is the reading for today. That was reading excerpts from Chapter 2 of Wisdom of the Mystic Masters with Joseph J. Weed. And I hope that helped to give you an idea of how karma works, what it is, what it isn't, and some of the natural laws that were discussed in the chapter, like cause and effect and law of correspondence. Oh, one thing I wanted to say quickly. When he says okay, let me see here. We shall only become free when we have learned the proper technique, and this lies not in our actions but in our desires, okay? Or rather in our lack of desires. That little section right there. He's right but he's missing a little bit of context that I want to divulge to you guys. It's not that your actions are irrelevant. Don't make that mistake. Your actions are super relevant. Your actions are what put change into the world around you and affect the world around you, and not only the world around you, but yourself. Your actions are ridiculously important. What he's suggesting, though, is that when the desire is completely reformed, subsequent action will be in alignment with that reformed phenomenon of desirelessness, okay, or selflessness. So when the inner world is completely worked on and reformed and brought to the highest level, the actions will speak for themselves. The actions will be in alignment with those. Okay, that's what he's saying. He's not saying that the actions are not necessary or irrelevant. Okay, no, the actions are very relevant, but it's reformed actions under the guidance, okay, at the behest of proper inner emotional and thought reform. Okay, that's what makes the actions in the world proper, in alignment with natural law, and resulting in proper karma. Okay, good karma. Okay, guys, that's it for now. I really want to thank you for listening in with me here on the Freemelon podcast. And next week, I may want to do the same thing with a different book and get into some. We talked a little bit about reincarnation. So maybe something I can do is we can chat about reincarnation and how we know that this is in fact a reality, not just a subjective human belief system. But anyway, that's all stuff for another day. Much love, my beloved Freemelons. I hope you had fun listening in, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the Freemelon podcast, or we will catch you on the next episode of the Freemelon Society on the YouTube channel. So go and check that out as well. All right, my lovelies, peace and love. We'll talk to you next time. Okay, bye-bye.